The Tampa Bay Lightning continued what may be their best stretch of the season so far with a redemption-filled 4-0 victory against the Florida Panthers on the road. This game may have also featured the best goaltending performance of the season. Plenty to break down from the game against the Cats on today's episode of Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Josh Sperber here, welcoming all of you into Locked On Lightning and thanking you guys for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if your team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, then this is the show for you. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we will get started by talking about last night. Another game where the Lightning got outshot. The only period where the Bolts outshot the Panthers was the first. They made 3 of their 15 shots on net, and they ended up being the only team with a power play goal. Did have more penalties in a game that was really chippy from the get-go. And I think that, for me, is why this game is just on a more pivotal kind of lore over the rest of the Lightning season, because I don't know if they're going to find another game as chippy as this one. But then again, I said the same thing about Sunday night's game against Florida, and penalty minutes just dwarfed that. It was only 14 penalty minutes in Amalie Arena, and the Panthers alone had more than that. The combined penalty minutes from the first of this home and home. 37 penalty minutes for the Lightning, 26 for the Panthers. A lot of fights. That Nikita Kucherov game misconduct penalty certainly added to it quite a bit as well, but Kuch still got on the board with a goal for the Lightning. Still needs 1 assist to pass Marty St. Louis for most in the Lightning's, or well, would have been most in the Lightning's history if it wasn't for Victor Hedman. Now it's second most in the Lightning history. It's something that you obviously expect him to do, but even with the game misconduct penalty, Kucherov still able to play just such a huge role in the game. It just shows, what a key player that he is. Took that penalty, fighting for his team, going after the Panthers, defending his guys, and that's something that he does. He can put pucks in net better than just about anyone if you're combining points and assists there. And he sticks up for his teammates as well. Really good team player, and you like to see that in your alternate captain. Hopefully it's not long of a suspension, so he'll be able to go. It's not any suspension, ideally, and hopefully he'll be able to go against the Rangers. Connor Geeky's absence was a big miss from this for the Lightning. Mitchell Chaffee, though, just continues to step up. He's a guy who's pretty locked into that right wing position for the Lightning, and I like him there. I like him on that third line, but, he's just been a guy. He's a rotational player for the Lightning, not a guy who's counted on for a whole lot, not using too many high leverage situations, but he's a hard worker and he's just a smart hockey player. And Chaffee has really stepped up for the Lightning this season. Not a guy that really too many people expected to make much noise, but he is 8th on the Lightning in points, has 7 goals and 4 assists with a plus minus of +5. And especially with a guy like Geeky out, you love to see Chaffee step up. I mean, guys like Chaffee who weren't drafted into the NHL, been around a couple teams before he came to the Lightning, and he's really making the most of what's so far his biggest opportunity. Last season, his longest NHL season, he played 30 games. This year, he is already in 2 fewer games, equaling the amount of games he has played for the entirety of his NHL career so far. Mitchell Chaffee has already set career highs in goals, assists, points, has his best plus minus, playing his most minutes. I mean, a career season so far for Mitchell Chafee. Now, I'm not going to say that it's going to be a breakout season. He's going to turn into some kind of star, because that's not the player he is. He's just a good, hard-nosed, worker and a grinder of a forward for the Lightning. And he did a really good job stepping up in Connor Geeky's absence. Geeky, obviously, a guy that the Lightning want to make a key portion of that core and a key portion of that team. But, little bit of precaution holding Connor Geeky out. And for the Lightning to do what they did, offensively and defensively, with some guys banged up, they're still on, one of their best stretches of the season, if not their best stretch of the season. That's something we'll talk about a little bit later, because there are still 2 more games in the month of December for the Lightning. But, they've had so many injuries. Moser, Hedman's missed a couple. We can keep Geeky, Nick Paul had a couple injuries, had some injury concerns. I mean, there's the list just goes on, and the Lightning have really kind of kicked it into another gear. I mean, this really seems to be what midseason form is looking like. The defense is just looking a lot better, more consistent for the most part. There's going to be a couple games here and there where you make mistakes, like those 2 shorthanded goals given up on Monday. But the team just looked like it's rounding into form right now. And, despite all the chippiness and all the kind of extra stuff that is going to happen in a rivalry game, and frankly, I don't think we're going to see all that much. The Lightning aren't really an instigating kind of team. They're less of a physical team and more about a team that's just going to let their play on the ice do the talking and just, put goals past you in a rate harder than any other team in hockey. That's what the Lightning do best. 126 goals scored so far this season. Only the Winnipeg Jets have put more goals in the net. They're tied with the Panthers for second, but the Lightning with a goal differential of plus 38, which is also second to the Winnipeg Jets. Again, we're going to go more into the Lightning team and just how they've done, but it's just impressive by any metric, them doing it with all these injuries. And it's why they started off so hot and why this game was just such a big game. I mean, this might have been, I think this is the most important win of the season so far, because it's against the defending Stanley Cup champions, who also happen to be your biggest rivals. Anytime you can beat those guys, especially doing it with your backup goalie, who played an incredible game. I mean, tip of the cap to Jonas Johansson. His 4th career shutout, stopped all 36 shots from the Panthers, which is one of, if not the most shots any Lightning goaltender has faced in a game so far this season. So Johansson just so key to that Lightning victory. And you got 2 teams with some of the best goalie combinations in the NHL. Spencer Knight has proved to be a more than capable backup for the Stanley Cup winner in Bobrovsky. Andrei Vasilevsky might be the best goalie on the planet, and Jonas Johansson just had an all-star caliber performance and one of the best individual goalie games of the season, not just for the Lightning, for the entire NHL. That we're going to go into a little bit more detail, but I think my biggest takeaway from this is that this is something the Lightning can absolutely build on. I don't think there's been a more buildable win for Tampa this season, except for maybe the first game of the year, simply because it was the first game of the year. But you lose a tough one at home against the Panthers, the same team that you play a little over 24 hours later. Then in that game on Monday, it's a preventable win. Those shorthanded goals, you just don't want to give up, especially in that situation. John Cooper even said after Sunday's game that he doesn't think he's ever seen multiple shorthanded goals scored on him in a game, let alone the same shift. And it's easy for a lot of teams to kind of lick their wounds and get frustrated over a game like that, especially since it's not the first such game the Lightning have played this season. They've been in moments where they've had the game in hand or had the game won, and it's just gotten away from them. But they took the lead early on, 3 first-period goals, 20% of their shots made in that first period, which is pretty impressive for a full team statistic. And they took that lead early and didn't let up. that was something that we've seen the Lightning do. There were a couple of games where they had bigger leads and they let their foot off the gas and let those leads slip away. They didn't do that. So this was a great response game to that tough loss at Amalie Arena. And because it was a rivalry game, I'm going to say it was the Lightning's biggest win of the season so far and could help turn the tide as they look to fight up and get back towards the top of the Atlantic Division. But one thing that you can definitely take away from last night's game was Jonas Johansson was incredible. Stopped 36 of 36 shots for his 4th career shutout. And this is coming from a guy who has not played all that much this season. It was just his 7th game in 2024. Was Johansson's performance the best in the NHL this season? Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. And you can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30 million and more in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. So just download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. We are back here on Locked On Lightning, and we're going to talk about Jonas Johansson. Now, usually when a goaltender has a big game, and we're going in depth about it, that goaltender is Andrei Vasilevskiy, and that is a lot less of a surprise. But Jonas Johansson, who has been a looming presence in the Lightning locker room for a couple of years now, it's his 2nd season on the team. He had kind of been passed around the league, even played for the Florida Panthers, actually lost both the games that he started for Florida in 2021. He's been a career backup, just 68 games in the NHL, though. He has now 4 shutouts after what may have been the best performance of his career. I certainly think it was his best and maybe even the best by a Lightning player in a game this season. Vasilevskiy has a couple of shutouts. I don't think any Lightning goalie has seen as many shots as Johansson did. And the teams shoot a lot more against him. The Devils put up a bunch of shots against him, scoring 5 goals against him when the Lightning visited New Jersey. The Lightning still ended up winning that game. This one, and it seemed like Johansson was just peppered with shots all night. The Panthers definitely dominated possession. The Lightning just took better advantage of the mistakes that Florida made and of the chances that they got. But, it could have been a very different game if Johansson hadn't been playing to the level that he was playing. And would Vasilevskiy have been able to put out a similar performance? Yeah, probably. But that doesn't change the fact that in the moment and on the road, Johansson just came out with an unbelievable game. The most shots the Lightning have faced in a game this season with 36, and Johansson stopped all of them. And it's not like the Panthers were shooting poor shots. They are just tied with the Lightning as the 2nd best offensive team in the NHL in terms of goals scored. 126 goals in 36 games for the Panthers. Lightning have done that in 4 fewer games, but that's not the point. The point is, this is a backup goalie on the road in a difficult place to play against the defending Stanley Cup champions, a rival going into the Panthers' house and stonewalling them is huge. And I honestly don't think that I'd be making as big a deal of this if it was Vasilevskiy in net, because we've seen Vasilevskiy, I'm pretty sure in both of his shutouts this year, he's had over 30 saves. I know it was the case against the Devils because that was one of the games, that 4-0 shutout for Vasilevskiy at home against the Devils was one of the games that rivaled Johansson in terms of shots faced. But it's the most that a Lightning goalie has seen this year. And in a difficult situation, I mean, I think it's certainly easier not to say that it's easy at all, but it's easier for a goalie to get a shutout in their own house. But you're talking on the road, rivalry game, fresh off of a disappointing loss, to come out and have a game like that is just remarkable. And it's certainly the best game for a goalie of the Lightning season. And it honestly might be that way for the NHL season. I mean, this is, it's not like they're doing this against the Sharks. They're doing this against the Panthers, who at 46 points only have two other teams in the Eastern Conference and four other teams in total with more points than them so far this season. And they're fourth in the league with 22 wins as well, a team that is 10 now, 6-1 at home, and had won 8 of their last 10 games heading into last night. This was a hot team that Johansson was playing, and the Lightning saw that firsthand at Amalie Arena. And this is a guy who, frankly, just hasn't played that much. 7 games in a season for a goalie isn't that much. And it had been almost 2 weeks since Vasilevskiy has played, but he's won each of his last 3 games in which he has played for the Lightning and has decreased the number of goals allowed since that performance against Columbus on the 21st, where he allowed 7 in the loss. In the last 3 wins, 2 goals allowed, then 1 goal allowed in Seattle, and then in Florida, a 36 save shutout. Most saves by a Lightning goalie this season, tied with the loss against Columbus, where Johansson saw 43 shots, but allowed 7 goals in that one. So, I mean, by a certain metric, yeah, it's the most shots saved without a goal coming in for the Lightning too. And I mean, not enough can be said about the impact Johansson had. He was well deserving that the star of the game nod that he got. And regardless of how strong the Lightning's offense was, I don't know if they win this game without him. You can say, oh yeah, Vasilevskiy was on the bench. He could have easily done the same thing. If Johansson can do it, Vazzy can do it. But you can't just assume a game like that is going to happen. Stopping that many shots in a road stadium in front of a hostile crowd is just not easy. So Johansson deserves a whole lot of credit. And I think it's got to be the best goalie performance of the week. I certainly think it's the best by a Lightning player this season. The only argument I'd have against that would just kind of be the magnitude of it. With some of Vasilevskiy's milestone performances, like his 500th win or his 500th game or his 300th win, where just doing that with pretty high stakes in a game that is, it's on everyone's mind. This wasn't any kind of big game other than the fact that it's a rivalry game against the team that's first in your division and also just happens to have the most recent Stanley Cup in their building. So I think that, Vasilevskiy might have made the same difference that Johansson did, but I'm calling that the best game by a goalie for a Lightning player this season, and maybe even in the entire NHL. I think I can go so far as to say that no goalie has had a better game than Jonas Johansson on Monday, December 23rd against the Florida Panthers. I don't think that's an unfair statement. I mean, the Panthers were just firing in good shots. They had multiple power play chances where nothing got through. It could have been, the Lightning also blocked 16 shots. So there could have been even more traffic on Jonas Johansson. And the more stats you read from this, you find it hard to believe that this guy hadn't played in about 2 weeks. And you just find it that much harder to believe that he's a backup goalie. Now, I'm not saying he's coming for Vasilevskiy's job anytime soon. I don't think there's a safer job in the NHL, except for maybe Connor Hellebuyck's job for the Winnipeg Jets, as well as he's been playing this year. So, this isn't going to be any kind of groundbreaking, team shifting kind of goalie games. This was a great performance by Jonas Johansson, and it's, he might see another 10 games this season, but he'll have a game that could be start of something even bigger than the Lightning have going on now, because they have had a scorching hot month of December. And we'll see what this game could eventually lead to, because a win like this, following just the second loss of a pretty busy month of December for the Tampa Bay Lightning, poses a simple question. Has this been the best month of the season so far? The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score and how many points each team will score. It's really thrilling. And not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown in the NFL, which players will get an assist in hockey. I mean, the possibilities are endless. There's so many different props that you can bet on. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So we've talked about a lot of bests so far. Well, really just one. This could have been the best game the Lightning have played this season. A really complete performance. It never once looked like they weren't in control, despite the fact that it was the Panthers getting the lion's share of the attacking time and the lion's share in shots, with 7 more than the Tampa Bay Lightning. But it comes on the heels of what has been a wildly successful month for Tampa Bay. After nearly storming back on a comeback against the then first place Toronto Maple Leafs on the last day of November, the Lightning were about as close to 500 as they were all season. But they started off December hot, dominant win against the Sharks, took 3 out of 4 on their West Coast road trip, and 3 out of 4 again on the Florida swing, if you're counting this most recent game on the 2 out of 3 homestand the Lightning just came off of. And I mean, mathematically, there is no doubt that it's been the Lightning's best month. In the month of October, they had a couple streaks. The Lightning did have their longest win streak of the season end against Florida, but beginning in October, they had 7 wins and 3 losses. In November, they had a 4-game losing streak to start the month, but finished that one under 500. And now it just seems like everything is all together for Tampa Bay. And I think that the Lightning will probably need to get at least 1 or 2 wins, because, on paper, just right now, these are 2 teams that the Lightning should beat when you look at New York and Montreal. Montreal has gotten better lately with the return of Patrick Laine, but them and the Rangers are still struggling. They're both still 30-point teams. The Canadiens with 31, the Rangers with 33. So these are 2 very winnable games, and I think that we'll be able to solidify that answer is yes, if they win even just the game against the Rangers. But they're on pace for their most wins in a calendar month and their fewest losses by a pretty wide margin, having already lost just 2 games, and they have won 7 of the 9 that they have played. So 7-2 in December is just impressive. And, especially coming on the heels of the month of November where they were below 500. And, they had some frustrating games. They had some tough losses at home. They had a couple that, as a team, I'm sure they felt they should have had in hindsight. But, this was the Lightning of just not just, beat a lot of good teams, but they've just played some really good games. That game against the Blues was was a really good, complete game. Other than that third period, if it wasn't for the third period against the Blue Jackets, where they went on that little scoring run, this game would have a challenge or Monday's game would have a challenge for the Lightning's best performance and most complete game of the season, because they haven't played better than those first 40 minutes at home against Columbus, but they have not played a more complete game than that 4-0 win that they had yesterday against Florida. And I think it just shows just how much better the Lightning have gotten over the last couple months. They've seen their power play rise in efficiency from 27th to top 5, and that has continued to go up. They've seen themselves become one of the highest goal-scoring teams in the entire NHL, and they're in the thick of the divisional race with 3 to 4 games in hand on everybody. 4 games in hand on the Panthers and 6 points behind them. 3 games in hand on the Maple Leafs and 4 points behind them in second. They're 2 points behind the Bruins with 4 games in hand against Boston. So the Lightning have themselves in a really good position. And, I'm sure the team isn't thinking too hard about the playoffs right now, but let's face it. I mean, you come to a team like the Lightning, and that is an expectation almost. And I'm sure that's how the players feel. And I'm sure that's, even if that's not how they think of it, they're winners. They want to get to the playoffs. They know that that's the ultimate goal. So when you can say that early in the season, you've set yourself up for postseason success, that's a good thing. And that's, I think, exactly what the Lightning are doing right now. I mean, you look at the teams they've beaten this month. Vancouver has been hot. Calgary has been surprising. The home teams, other than Florida, have been games that you'd think that they should win. Obviously, the biggest win of the month was yesterday, and the next 2 home games back to back, I think, will be pretty telling. A little holiday rest, and then just 2 games right in a row. And then the Lightning have a pretty loaded month of January with no less than 2 games in a single week. I think it's going to be their longest month of the year in terms of games. And, it was a little lighter. They had a little bit more days off in between games, and the Lightning used that to their advantage. But I think they have to use just this strong stretch, taking 7 of their last 10 and 7 of 9 in November. They have to use this stretch and use this cushion that they've carved for themselves to their advantage. You can't let this kind of slip. You want to keep yourself in the playoff towards the top of the wild card, and ideally get in from the division. I mean, that's obviously the goal for the Lightning, but this is what you want midseason form to look like too. Regardless that some of their best games have been against subpar teams. You look at that 4-1 win against the Jets that gave Vasi his 300th, that 4-0 shutout against the Devils, those 2 big wins over the Avalanche where they won by multiple goals each time. I mean, this win against the Panthers is just another one to add to the list of just impressive wins against playoff teams and against contenders. And in this case, against the reigning champions. I mean, that can't be understated. I mean, I doubt there's a more excited stadium than the season immediately following a Stanley Cup victory. I mean, it's got to be just electric in that building, and not easy for a team like the Lightning to play in, but they just dominated. And I think that definitely highlighted why December is their best month of the season, because 24 hours before they lost a game that they certainly felt was winnable against a rivalry team, and it would have vaulted them up a bit higher in the standings as well. So what do the Lightning do? They turn right around and play the same team, learn from their mistakes, and beat them. So I think that it'll certifiably, undeniably be the best month of the season if the Lightning get the next 2 wins. But I think regardless, this is the best month of the season so far for the Tampa Bay Lightning, because it's going to end up with the most wins, likely the fewest losses, hopefully the fewest losses. And it has the Lightning in a good position right now. It has them in mid-season form right now. And I think, and they can still get better. They're playing as well as they are in a month that hammer the team with injuries. End of November, last couple of weeks in November, and most of the month of December, I don't think there's been a team with more guys that have been missing time with injuries than the Tampa Bay Lightning. It has just been rough, but the Lightning are still banding together as a team and beating the teams that they're supposed to beat, and beating some of the top teams in the entire NHL. So, for those reasons, I think it's been the best month of the season so far, and hopefully we'll have a similar tune on the 30th after we recap the final game of the Lightning's month. The next Lightning game is against the New York Rangers at Amalie Arena on Saturday, the 28th. But that is going to do it for today's show. Josh Sperber here, thanking all of you for tuning in and making Locked On Lightning your first listen today. Now for your second listen, make sure to check on Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And wherever you've listened to this podcast today, first off, thanks again. But please make sure to give us a like, a follow, a subscribe. And if you want to chat with us in the comments or message us on X, we're at LO_Lightning. We'd love to hear your guys' input because we make the show for you. So we want you guys to have this best experience possible when you're watching or listening to Locked On Lightning. So thank you again for tuning in, and please enjoy your holiday.